Matt Walsh is desperate for something to latch on to because he made his mark on the world by being an anti-trans bigot. And Ron DeSantis, when his campaign sort of sputtered out and he stopped saying things like woke and trying to ride some type of anti-trans bigotry into, even in the Republican primary, it didn't work. Matt Walsh was stuck with just a closet full of lumberjack shirts to prove that he's manly.
His gender affirming outfits.
And then with nothing to talk about. So here he is. Now he's got his banjo in the background there because he's trying to show his country. I'm rural dude, and you can tell because look at these shirts I've bought from wherever it was, whatever, Land's End or wherever he's got his. Let's see what he's got to say.
And of course, we aren't colonizers just because we happen to live in the United States, but also we never should have accepted the premise that colonization.
Pause it for a second. I mean, what was the original name of the territories, Matt? You know history better than I. When this country, when white people landed and formed like some type of organization to where we were, what were those called?
The colonies.
Right. Right. The colonies.
How many of those were there?
The colonies. Interesting. Interesting. Okay. All right, but we were not colonizers here in this.
Well, he's trying. So this is the trick that these right wingers play all the time. Like we're talking about structures, America, 100%. Like right, but you're not a colonizer, Sam. You're not a colonizer, watcher of Matt Walsh's show. So any structural critique, you can just completely disavow it because otherwise it would be you have framed it now in your mind by watching Matt Walsh as a personal attack on you.
I mean, and literally this sort of thing where you're putting the sort of history of colonialism on just everyday people, even everyday white people. Like, of course, we know the relation of like Africans and Native Americans to the colonies, but also most of white people that actually did the work in like Virginia colonies or whatever often were indentured servitudes and impressed into service in the UK. Like literally just the British government's like, we need workers to go die after 10 years of growing cotton and tobacco in Virginia. Just pull them off the street. If they're criminals, or we can label them criminals, you can ship them on a boat and make them go be laborers. So like it was an elite project. It wasn't just like, oh, look at all these regular people from Europe doing this.
All right, go ahead.
And of course, we aren't colonizers just because we happen to live in the United States, but also we never should have accepted the premise that colonization is some sort of inherently bad, evil thing. It's actually a ludicrous premise. No matter what leftists meant when they say that they want to decolonize the West, the right should have opposed it on principle. That's because colonization, historically, has been a force for good throughout the world. It was the process of introducing the rule of law, public health, human dignity to certainly this entire hemisphere.
The idea that there were no sort of like laws or human dignity or public health among indigenous people. Like it was just, they are just walking around bumping into each other. Like animals. Mm-hmm. That's what he's saying. I mean, this is the exact same thing that Christian missionaries would say. Yeah. In fact, often they were the same people in many respects. The idea that he is trying to sort of rewrite this reality, this is the justification for colonization.
Yeah.
And you can only say this from the distance of history because, this far away from the actual main colonialization projects and the sort of post-colonial world we live in now. Because when people actually had living memory of the British Raj in India or whatever, the idea that you would say that is maintaining dignity or giving dignity to the Indian people would be ludicrous.
And again, I assume he's talking in the context of Israel and the Palestinians. But, and I reference this, go watch The Great Book Robbery. You want to talk about there's plenty of society in many of these instances, but plenty of even society that we would find acceptable even from the most sort of Christian colonizing measure, even from Matt Walsh's standards. But continue.
Well, can I just say really quickly before, because I just looked up a few short statistics. Britain stole around $45 trillion from India in its colonization of India. And via the History Channel, history.com, that they estimate that as the 15th century drew to a close, some 60 million people lived across the Americas. And after European settlers, with new disease, warfare, slavery, around 56 million people, or around 90% of the indigenous population, would die. So this is
that's the public health.
That's
have some smallpox.
Exactly. That's what. Just to be clear about what Matt Walsh is saying was a good force for the
Hey,
world.
but we put down some train tracks, so
Yeah.
World. It was the process of introducing the rule of law, public health, human dignity to certainly this entire hemisphere that we're currently living on.
Also note, he doesn't say.
As we've talked about earlier in the week, before colonization,
It's to an area.
the natives were ripping the hearts out of children as offerings to their sun gods.
Racist.
And of course, when I say natives, and I say that term, but the tribes that lived on this continent when the conquistadors arrived were themselves not native to this continent. They came here and killed whoever was there first. But in any event, conquering them was the right decision for all of humanity. And it's just beyond dispute that we are all living much better lives now because of it. That's what colonization means.
Except for the people that are dead.
yeah.
Why
Except
is
for
it
the people
beyond
that are dead
dispute?
and slave.
Show a piece of evidence. What is beyond dispute? What is beyond dispute?
Africa, yeah, Africa's definitely better off because of colonization.
This is the Facts and Feelings Network. Ben Shapiro. Show us some facts and figures to back up your explosive claim that the killing of tens of millions of people and the taking of trillions of dollars of wealth from different continents, that is irrefutably, it's made us better.
I mean, I think there is a logic to it. For instance, let's say I was to go and take Matt Walsh's stuff and kill him. I'm not suggesting I would do this, but I'm just using his example here.
Yes.
And I would take his stuff, take his money, take his banjo, have all his flannel. I'd probably maybe sell some of it on Depop.
Makes sense. You would never be able to get the smell out.
I'm certainly not going to wear it. I mean, I think it would be too, probably tight in the chest and across the shoulders. But anyways, the point being, would I be better off? I mean, he'd be dead. Mm-hmm. Okay, fair. But would I be better off if there was no accountability?
Yeah.
If there was no one to say, hey, you can't do that, or you should go to jail for that, or hey, you've got to pay something to his family. If there was nobody to do that, would I be better off? I mean, I think arguably, would the world be better off? I mean, probably, definitely. Mm-hmm. I mean, so there is a logic to what he's saying in terms of if I come in and kill people and take their stuff, or put them into a little refugee camp, let's say, or a reservation, and take their stuff.
Mm-hmm. Or put them in another kind of camp with walls around it.
However type of camp, or I kill them, and I take their stuff and their resources, am I better off? I think the answer is, particularly if I'm not going to be held to account, yeah, of course. Mm-hmm. Of course. So in that sense, there's a logic to what he's saying.
It's an extermination.
I'm sorry for
yes, it's an extermination.
I'm too emotional to see it.
Yeah, you're not looking at facts.
to this continent. They came here and killed whoever was there first. But in any event, conquering them was the right decision for all of humanity. And
except for their, except for, see, point. So, okay, again, if you decide that the people you are conquering, i.e. killing, pillaging, stealing from, are not human, then there is a logic to what he's saying. Humanity only consists of people who rape, pillage, and steal without accountability and their ancestors. Mm-hmm. And if that's the way that you view the world, which I think Matt Walsh clearly does, and that's why we say he's fascistic or we say he's a theocrat, then yes, it makes sense within his inner logic. Continue.
First, but in any event, conquering them was the right decision for all of humanity. And it's just beyond dispute that we are all living much better lives now because of it. That's what colonization means in practical terms. It means you're doing a lot better now than you would have if colonization had never occurred. And
unless you had been colonized.
Why not admit you're...
And after the massacres in Israel this week and the shameful and brazen response from many corners of the left, no serious person can dispute what decolonization means either.
Sorry, can you pause?
It refers to...
But like, why did he start that whole bit about denying being a colonizer then? Like, if you say like it's done good for this hemisphere specifically, and then like who did the colonizing then?
Well, I mean, I think we're talking about this also sometimes within the context of like Israel Palestine right now. Like, well, you know, they deserve it. They when we strike them and we kill children, it's because they were human shields. But even if we did do that, we actually did it in certain instances because they deserve it. They did it to themselves essentially. Or that it was not on purpose and we were targeting Hamas fighters. They always try to have it both ways in justifying brutality.
And after the massacres in Israel this week and the shameful and brazen response from many corners of the left, no serious person can dispute what decolonization means either. It refers to a genocidal ideology that we have let fester for far too long. And at this point, the stakes are obvious. Everybody promoting decolonization wants to murder civilians, not just in Israel, but in every civilized country on the planet. Don't ignore what they're saying. Understand that they are your enemy.
Well, pause it. I mean, you can talk about what they're saying, but there's no reason not to listen to what Israel is saying as well. And you could actually even look at just sheer numbers. I mean, if we're talking about killing civilians, there is, I mean, if we, sitting in a closet in Brooklyn in front of IKEA panels, can predict there are going to be hundreds, if not thousands, of civilian deaths by these bombings, then surely the people dropping the bombs are aware of that too. Like, you know, the idea of we're not targeting civilians.
Right.
Therefore, we get a free pass on the implications of what we are supposedly targeting. Even if I was to accept the idea that, like, they believe there is a military value to a hospital. They believe there is a military value to the UN thing. Even if I was to accept that, even if I was to stipulate that, which I am highly skeptical about, but even if I was to stipulate that, there is a concept in the law of, in terms of both, like in terms of manslaughter, in terms of liability, that if a reasonable person knows that this is going to happen because of your actions, you have liability. And at the end of the day, it does not matter to you as a parent if your kid was intentionally targeted or just like it was quite obvious that your kid was going to get killed. It really doesn't. And it's, I mean, I mean, this has been said a million times.
Yeah.
Should we let him finish here? Okay.
Murder civilians, not just in Israel, but in every civilized country on the planet. Don't ignore what they're saying. understand that they are your enemy and the enemy of all civilized people.
Civilized.
And that's why when they call you a colonizer, you should tell them you're welcome. And then you should prepare to defend yourself.
Which, like, I remember watching, sorry.
Why don't these people appreciate it?
I know.
Like, that's the thing. It's so obvious. It's without any
great for
argument.
humanity.
It's so obviously good for humanity. It's just that the non-humans amongst us don't get it.
We are the benevolent killers.
That's why you
We're
can
the
protect
we're
yourself.
the
They just hate doing better than they were doing before.
They hate us for our freedom.
Who doesn't?
I remember watching the film Pocahontas growing up, the Disney one, and the villains talk about how they need to be civilized, speaking about indigenous people in this country, and it's presented in a children's film as like a very problematic statement, and that movie has its issues 100%. But I remember that as well, and like someone like Matt Walsh can't even grasp onto that concept as an adult. But like the Israeli Prime Minister tweeted out, I think yesterday, this is a struggle between the children of light and the children of darkness, between humanity and the law of the jungle. See if you can find any daylight in between what Matt Walsh is saying about colonization and essentially those tens of millions of people that died and the trillions of wealth stolen. It's not the same, but the impulse and the dehumanization behind that, and that kind of statement. This is a struggle between us, presumably white people, and the uncivilized.
What does jungle
The law
mean?
of the jungle.
Is there jungles in Gaza?
Actually, no. It's an open-air prison that's actually mostly concrete because it has to house 2.4 million people in there. So there's no jungle there.
Within 5,000 miles.
Then let's think more about that. Who lives in jungles? Who lives in jungles? Animals. I mean, they've called them human animals at this point. Savages. And they're okay to be colonized in that way. Like, I mean, honestly, it's just crazy that he can say this kind of stuff and also provide zero evidence, and there will be a certain fraction of people that are like, that makes sense to me, because it reaffirms my existing beliefs about certain kinds of people being savages and members of the jungle, right? Abiding by the law of the jungle.